All right, good morning and welcome to the Aired Out podcast. Congratulations to all of the hunters that were successful this weekend. Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Aired Out from Fly on the Wall Productions, Facebook and YouTube. We're streamed everywhere you get your podcasts, and we're on the web at airedoutvt.com. A winter weather advisory tomorrow from 1 a.m. until 1 p.m. for freezing rain. Northern New York, central and eastern Vermont is where the threat of the freezing rain is the most. Upper 30s later today, partly sunny. It's going to be, pretty seasonable day, I would say. Looks like, tonight, partly to mostly cloudy, 25, and then tomorrow, freezing rain, eventually changing to just rain, upper 30s. Pat Riley on the birthday list today. The old boy, I don't know how old he is, doesn't matter, he still rocks out. Joey Buttendorf, Glenn Pryor, Glenn Wright, Rachel Richards, Maggie Dexter, Faith Hall, and Cody Copeland, all on this Day 25 of the month. Wow, we're getting close to Thanksgiving. National Shopping Reminder Day today. This is the day when we're supposed to make sure that we know what we're doing. It's all planned out. We got our list together, and if we're shopping, we're prepared. The grocery stores have been crazy. Facebook question of the day: got a public school curriculum based on stories from the Bible, approved by the Texas State Board of Education. Friday's vote 8-7 in favor of this. Wondering what you think about it. Post your comments up. We already got a couple of warm ones this morning with that regard. Daily Dose of Feel Good. We got this coffee shop in Middleborough, Massachusetts in the news after handing out free coffee to anyone who walks through the door dancing. And the videos on TikTok have gone viral. They're incredible. They're so funny. The lady kicking off her shoes and getting right to it. I love it. Vermont headlines over the weekend from PTZ, Digger, Times Argus, CAX. We have a man in serious condition. Injuries after a stabbing in St. Albans. 30-year-old guy stabbed in the chest during an argument yesterday with another man identified as Justin Lee Reynolds from St. Albans. Victim was taken to the hospital and later in the day listed in serious but stable condition. Reynolds charged with second-degree attempted murder. He's being held without bail. Killington getting ready for the World Cup this weekend. The new local owners able to make enough snow to be ready. The single-day record of more than 19,000 fans was set in 2019. Will it break that? I don't know, but I know there's going to be a lot of people there from the Berg Mountain Academy. Go Michaela Schifrin. Could set a new record this year. It's going to be incredible. We have an inmate at the state prison in St. Jay accused of assaulting corrections officers and trying to escape. 48-year-old Joseph Heim from Fayston tried to take a set of keys from guards while at the hospital for a medical event on Friday. Corrections officers were able to prevent the escape. He allegedly assaulted guards physically and with body fluids while resisting. Isn't that nice? in custody following his arrest last week for possession of methamphetamine and violating conditions of his release. Sounds like a real winner. State is agreeing to pay nearly $200,000 to settle a lawsuit over the death of an inmate at a Rutland daycare, or infant rather, at a Rutland daycare center. This one got a lot of traction over the last couple of days. Facility owner Stacy Valancourt convicted of manslaughter for the death of this 6-month-old infant. Unbelievable. Harper Rose Breyer back in 2019. The baby died when Valancourt gave her a sedative that was not prescribed. The child's family claimed in the suit that the state didn't properly investigate past complaints about Valancourt administering medicine at her daycare without parental permission. So that story is huge in Vermont right now. National headlines, we'll post them up for you. The forecaster saying that Thanksgiving travel could be messy. AAA saying about 80 million Americans expected to travel at least 50 miles from their homes over the holidays, and some of these travelers are going to be heading into some rainy weather and even some heavy snow. Eastern U.S., be prepared for delays due to strong winds across the region as well. And then, of course, we have that coupled with the FAA saying that air traffic could be slowed down because of staffing issues. So, anyway, we have a lot to get to this morning. Dr. Rick Barnett is sitting right across from me. Very good morning to you, sir. And I am so glad that you're here this morning. We have a lot to get to, a lot to talk about. Welcome back.
Hey, happy to be back. Thanks for asking me to come down again. I love having our discussions here in the studio. It's awesome.
Well, I'm so glad you're here. Let's get right to it. We have an advisory board that has been trying to coordinate things and get some dialogue going with state legislatures about something that you're very passionate about, and that is the concept of utilizing psychedelics for the sake of therapeutic progress with patients. Mm-hmm. So what happened? This is something that has been ongoing, that you've been advocating for quite some time. You're the co-founder of the Vermont Psychedelic Society. Do I have that right?
The Psychedelic Society of Vermont, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So what's going on? What's the latest? I know ABC 22 and 44 have given this some recent attention. What's the latest?
Yes. So earlier this month, a report came out from this Psychedelic Therapy Advisory Group, of which I was the chair, and it seemed to get a lot of attention from some news sources. Vermont Digger did a piece on it, Vermont Public, Channel 22. So that was happening in the last couple of weeks, and basically the report has generated a lot of conversation for folks, knowing that people in Vermont are suffering from mental health issues and struggling with addiction. We've known that for a long time. And we also know now that psychedelic medicines are being developed for the treatment of many conditions. And we know that people are using psilocybin and other psychedelic drugs for self-treatment, for their own personal use, for microdosing, for example, rather than maybe going to their doctor, which I don't recommend or not, getting an SSRI like Prozac or Zoloft or something, and maybe trying an alternative like psilocybin, getting it from various sources, who knows. And so there's a lot of self-treatment, self-experimentation going on. So we were really charged as a group to look at the research and look at other state models to see what was going on in other states around this issue, to see what, if anything, Vermont could do to set up something here in Vermont to help people get safe and effective access to these federally illegal substances. Specifically, we focused on psilocybin, which is the active ingredient in mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. So we didn't get into talking about LSD, for example, or mescaline or DMT or other more well-known psychedelic drugs. We just spoke mostly about psilocybin.
Psilocybin magic mushrooms.
Correct.
All right. Which so many people are, frankly, growing anyways.
Yeah, it's easy to grow on your own. It's actually, I believe it's illegal to have the spores. The spores are not illegal, so someone can order spores online and set up a little grow kit in their closet, and people are growing their own and they're sharing it with their friends, and they're doing this all under the auspices of the drug war, that's federally illegal drug, but
Sure.
not unlike cannabis in some ways. And this came up in our discussions as an advisory group. What did Vermont do with cannabis? We first medicalized it in these dispensaries, then we authorized a personal grow and personal use model, and now we have full-on commercialization of cannabis. Will psilocybin magic mushrooms follow a similar path? At least for now, the report that we generated together as a group did not recommend pursuing anything more formally at this time, which was a little bit of a disappointment for me because I'm more of an advocate. I believe safe and effective use can be set up here in Vermont in some kind of way. But, it is important to pay attention to the research and understand that there are concerns out there. It's not without risks. And so we as a group, we didn't come to a lot of consensus, but we came up with a pretty good report suggesting there may be pathways at some point in the future, but just not right now.
You and I have had conversation about what you've asked me, what do you think Vermonters want? What do you think the average Vermonter would like? Would they like to see this discussed more openly in the legislature? Would they like to have our Vermont lawmakers take this more seriously, get more involved with this? Let's get the ball rolling here. I mean, you've been on for years with me saying that progress with this is so slow. I think, and I don't have anything to back this up, but if I were to guess, I would say that Vermonters would really want this to be well discussed and figured out as an option here. But I think Vermonters would also say that there's a much bigger problem here. I mean, there's opioid use, misuse, abuse. There's definitely a mental health crisis, which is stemming from a whole bunch of shit that's going on in Vermont. And like you said, there's risks of what? Dependency?
No, the risks are more along the lines of a couple of things. One is that if people choose to use high doses of magic mushrooms on their own in a recreational way without any kind of thoughtfulness or preparation, they don't really know where they're getting their magic mushrooms from. They haven't tried a small amount first to make sure that it's safe. And it's just sort of indiscriminate wild use in the context of shooting heroin
Sure.
or being hammered or, smoking tons of weed. And it's just used sort of indiscriminately like that. I think there are risks, and there are some psychological risks that could come from that, whereas people could, have mental health struggles if they use high dose psychedelics without thoughtful preparation and a sort of a curated or well designed environment. It could be with friends and family or with trusted others or facilitators, guides out there. But I think for people to just go out and eat 10 grams of mushrooms and see what happens, that could be a real risk. I like what you said. I do think Vermont. I'm a Vermonter, born and raised here in Vermont, and we are intrepid individuals. We are very forward thinking. We're very independent, and we like to get shit done, and we like to do it our way. And I think that there is an issue here that Vermonters want to see more progress being made on the overdose crisis, on the addiction crisis. They want to see progress on the mental health crisis. And we have these medicines that have, in my opinion, been thoroughly studied, and they're extremely safe. Again, not without risks, but extremely safe. So blocking access to them, either holding them up in some Food and Drug Administration approval process or waiting for the ultimate medical model to emerge so that we can deliver them in clinical or medical settings. I think we're selling ourselves short. We need to take action.
You say extremely safe, but then you also say not without risk. Again, just to reiterate what you're saying, if it's used recreationally with
it's extremely safe from a biological or physical level. You can't overdose on psilocybin mushrooms. You'd have to eat like 200 pounds of it, and you'd just die from your stomach exploding from eating too much stuff and shoving it in there.
Right.
You can't overdose on it. It's really not typically associated with developing an addictive disorder. People can get addicted to all kinds of things, all kinds of experiences.
Of course.
But it's sort of self-limiting to use psilocybin on a daily basis. It's just going to wear off in its effects. You can't keep, in other words, the tolerance gets built very quickly. So there's no high or there's no psychedelic experience if you eat them every day. And also there's no withdrawal process. So if you did eat them every day and then suddenly stopped, you wouldn't go into withdrawal like you would with opioids. So from a biological or physical level, they're extremely safe. The risks are only associated when it's used in combination indiscriminately with 3 or 4 other drugs.
Right.
It's used in settings where it's just total debauchery and personal boundaries are being violated. So there's like potential consequences there. But as a rule, they're very safe compared to tobacco, alcohol, opioids, benzodiazepines, stimulants, ketamine, MDMA, you name it. Like psilocybin mushrooms are the lowest possible risk of harm in so many ways. So I think that keeping it illegal here in Vermont and across the country I think it's very short-sighted.
Wow. You just unpacked an awful lot right there. Like with anything, when you have the responsibility to be engaged, whether you're driving a car, whether you're parenting your kids, whether you're involved with some kind of responsibility, work, whatever it is, you've got to have a sharp mind. You've got to be on your toes, and you can't be walking around recreationally high. And that goes for anything, alcohol, pot, anything. What's the difference between and I'm kind of hesitant to use the word mind altering, but what's the difference between the mind altering, and if lack of a better term, and if there's something I should use differently, let me know, between THC and the psychedelic mushrooms? Chemically, what's happening in the brain?
Totally different neurotransmitter systems. The cannabis, THC, operates on the endocannabinoid system. Totally different activations going on in the brain there. It actually, technically, I believe in the past, I'm not sure if it's still the case, cannabis or THC is considered a mild hallucinogen, a mild psychedelic. So it does produce some sort of spacey, when you're stoned, you can be spacey, you can be mellow, you can be, your thoughts and your behaviors and your feelings can change and be altered and, making new connections in some ways. But it does so by very different mechanisms in the brain neurochemically. Whereas psychedelics or psilocybin, for example, the classic tryptamines, they operate more on the serotonin system in the brain. So we hear about serotonin when we think of selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, SSRIs, like sertraline, fluoxetine, those classic SSRIs. So serotonin is active in the brain, but slightly different receptor subtypes. And it's a very potent activator of those receptor sites. And also the effects are fairly long lasting. So your altered state of consciousness on psilocybin will last, anywhere between 4 and 7 hours, depending on the dosage. And I think with cannabis, you get baked for, like an hour, and then it kind of wears off, and you're just kind of spent, and then you got to smoke again and stuff. So there's definitely a difference in terms of the potency of the effect and the duration of the effect, and then also neurotransmitter wise, it's a very different. Psychedelics are also called non-specific amplifiers. So they can amplify states of consciousness. If you're in a rather good mood, they might be able to amplify the good mood that you're in, feeling really connected to other people. If you're feeling dark and withdrawn and you take it, you can feel an amplification of those things. And so I think, again, it makes a case for, using these substances in a safe and well-contained way with somebody there who might be sober, or other people who you consider safe, so that if you do fall into sort of dark pathways in your brain during experience, that you're safe. You still have access to some kind of reality. And if you have a trusted other there with you, or you're in a safe place by yourself, you can look around, you can sort of restabilize yourself and be like, okay, I am safe here. I know that. And so even if you go down dark pathways, if it's done in a healthy way, you can mitigate a lot of the challenges and the risks associated with it.
Wow. This is fascinating. Tell me about Dr. Kelly Klein. She's the medical director of the Department of Mental Health. Tell me a little bit about her.
Well, I just met her through our collaboration as the co-leads of this psychedelic therapy advisory group, and I found her to be fantastic. She was so helpful and kind and responsive, and I think we worked really, really well together as a team to organize these meetings, get people together, facilitate the discussion with such disparate views. I mean, we have such a diverse group of people, in a sense, or at least people with diverse opinions. And Dr. Klein and I were really, really able to listen to all the different voices at the table and try to represent all our different perspectives in a really healthy and collaborative way. So she was fantastic. It was great to work with her and meet her, and hopefully we can continue our discussions.
Audio soundbite from ABC 22 and 44 of Dr. Kelly Klein just recently.
The substances are not new. They have been around for ages. Research around them is what is newer, and the use of them in our society, specifically in medicine. But we can watch and learn from their programs and see what they're doing to make sure that the population remains safe, and to make sure that things remain therapeutic for people.
Which is just what you've echoed here. Colorado, Oregon, Massachusetts. What's going on with these three states with regard to what we're talking about here this morning? Are they also curious, just like Vermont is, about possibly introducing this into mainstream health?
Yeah, I think, to Dr. Klein's point there on the clip that you played, we were charged as a group to look at the therapeutic use of these medicines by licensed health practitioners in clinical settings. So that's a really important distinction. Our discussion centered around the medical model or the medicalization of these substances. We were not talking about, at least not very often or in very much depth, around decriminalization, personal use, all those kinds of avenues. And so when you ask about Oregon, they had an interesting model. They were the first to get something over the finish line in their state, and they've been operating these psilocybin service centers, facilitated use centers. And believe it or not, JD, these programs were set up to exclude people with mental health disorders. They were set up specifically to be a non-medical, non-clinical setting. They were set up to be a therapeutic, not clinically therapeutic, but a facilitated use model by people who may not be licensed healthcare practitioners, but went through a specific training model to be able to sit with people, to prepare them for these experiences, to help them integrate these experiences in a safe and effective way. And they are now looking at that model. They're upgrading it. I think there's like 3,000 or more people that have been served in these facilitated centers. And they're looking now at changing their model to include, in some capacity, licensed healthcare practitioners to do some screening and assessment and some follow-up care for some of these folks. So it's just interesting that, Dr. Klein made that distinction, and a lot of municipalities around the country, in California, in Massachusetts, in Michigan, in Colorado, in other states, they have decriminalized psilocybin so people can use it without fear of some sort of severe punishment. And that's a very different model than a clinical or licensed healthcare practitioner serving an illegal, Schedule I drug to somebody. People can choose to use it on their own. We have cognitive liberties, and these municipalities and states have decriminalized these. But the measure in the ballot question number 4 in Massachusetts this month failed. So Massachusetts does have some decriminalized regions, like I think the western part of Massachusetts, maybe Greenfield, Mass, that area, Northampton, Williamstown, I think they have decriminalized it. And Somerville, some places outside of Boston have decriminalized psilocybin mushrooms. So there's two competing models here, JD. There's the rigorous clinical medical model that has its own safety measures and regulatory challenges, and then there's the personal use model. And I think what we're seeing now in the field is momentum building for more of the personal use model, but with some oversight. I think that's what people want to see. They want to see people have access to these medicines, but they would like to see some sort of oversight that doesn't have to be a highly regulated, medicalized model.
Sure. When a doctor is introducing a medication to a patient, they're introducing something new to the body, to the brain, chemically. What's the difference between, I know that you've heard many times that some of these drugs that are out on the market that are legally being prescribed to patients can be very detrimental to one's health long term. Here we are. We have a natural substance that Dr. Klein just said has been around for, I don't know how many thousands of years. What do you say about different cultures, the Asian culture, indigenous people who say, man, this is just a way of life for our culture. You guys need to put an end to your stigma, and you guys are missing the boat. What do you say to those cultures that speak this way?
Yeah, I mean, so much reverence and respect for cultures and societies and groups of people who have the systems of care, the relational variables, the rituals, all the things that go into being able to use these substances in healthy and respectful ways, whether it's Native American church and the peyote ceremonies, or the Shipibo people and Central and South America. They have the lineage, they have the culture, they have the wisdom to be able to use these medicines in healthy, responsible ways. But whereas we as Americans, as a modern Western society, we are, we worship science, we worship the medical model, we worship the evidence, we worship everything that comes to like materialism. And so anything that smacks of spiritualism or sort of non-verifiable tools or aspects of experience we're very skeptical of. So a lot of people, and I would say some Vermonters may feel this way too, they may say we are not ready for these medicines because the science, the experts in the science have told us that we're not ready yet. And I'm here as an expert who represents the medical system, a traditionally trained healthcare provider who respects the Western medical model tremendously. I'm here to say both can be true. We can have cultures and communities here in Vermont who respect certain rituals and develop tools and ways of relating to each other that can facilitate these experiences in safe and effective ways without having to wait for the Food and Drug Administration and the billions of dollars of research to be pumped into getting these things across the finish line. So, yeah.
Wow. Well said. It says repeatedly, ABC 22's article, not ready. And I noticed that you just used those words as well. Vermont is not ready. Massachusetts is not ready for this. Is that the reason why? Which is what you've just explained?
Well, no, I think, yes. I think the reason is legitimate, is that the conclusion of our group, which the group represents a highly medicalized perspective of traditional medical or traditional medical establishment kind of mentality, which is that for a medical model, we are not ready for these medicines to be introduced. But that's one model.
Do you feel that way?
I think our healthcare system is broken fundamentally, and we see it in the news all the time. There's all kinds of services and hospital budgets being cut and insurance premiums going up, and people can't get access to mental health care. The system is broken. So I don't think we're ready to plug these medicines into a broken system. No, it's terrible. It's a terrible idea. But I do think licensed healthcare practitioners can, do a lot of education and training around these experiences and be involved somehow in a community-based model where Vermonters are already choosing to grow and use these substances on their own. They should feel comfortable going to their healthcare provider and saying, what do you know about psilocybin mushrooms? My buddy just gave me 10 grams of it, and I don't know how much to take, and I don't know if it interacts with my Prozac that I've been taking for years, and I don't know what to do about it. If we're not ready to have an open-ended, non-stigmatized conversation with patients who are already using it, that's where the medical model can plug in. We can be there as a team, a support team, as a consultation team. We're not endorsing people and promoting go out and use psychedelics, heal your mental health.
Sure.
But we are saying, look, if you're going to do it, can you come to us and we can work with you, as long as we've been trained and educated about it and we're not full of our own ideas about stigma and the 1960s and stuff. There's just ways to interact with patients so they feel comfortable talking with us, and that we can optimize their experiences, knowing that they have a team member, who's a healthcare practitioner who could be there to help them.
Some of the books that were shown in the video clip that Local 22, Local 44 shot got my attention, because were those, and you're smiling, were those books that were on your shelf?
Yeah,
they were.
Yeah. The Jordan came in my office and we did the interview, and she said, "Can we pull out some books and I can get some shots of these books?" Yeah.
Yeah. One of them was, I think, Change Your Mind, or How to Change Your Mind.
Yeah, The Pollen Effect, Michael Pollan. Yeah, that book came out in 2018. A lot of people call it the pollen effect or the pollinator, because that book reached a massive audience and really goes into a lot of detail about all kinds of different psychedelic drugs and the history and the research. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And they did a Netflix series on it too. So there's a Netflix series called How to Change Your Mind that people can watch.
I saw that, and when it was over, I literally sat there on the couch
and ate a bunch of mushrooms.
No, and I just processed everything that I had just watched. If you haven't seen that, you've got to. It's on Netflix. One more time. What is it called again on Netflix?
On Netflix, I believe it's called How to Change Your Mind,
Okay.
which is the same title as the book.
As the book,
I believe, yeah.
There was another one that you told me about. I think it was called Fungi.
Oh, yeah, Fantastic Fungi came out, I think, in 2018, 2019, specifically about mushrooms. That's a fascinating and very cinematically beautiful documentary on mushrooms in general, but also psychedelic mushrooms. Fantastic Fungi. That's a good one. Very good.
I have had some friends, and I think I've told you this off the air, who have suggested to me the thought of microdosing. And they're like, man, why don't you? Everyone should. Everyone's got a reason why they should. It will change your life if you do it responsibly, if you do it regularly. Your doctor knows about it, and you're not doing it to get high. But there's still part of me that is hesitant. I've never done mushrooms. And I have friends who think I'm crazy that I haven't. Maybe that's my age. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the way I was raised. Mm-hmm. But there is real deep-rooted stigma regarding this. I mean, you just say the word psychedelics or the word mushrooms, and they're buzzwords for so much of our culture. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's going to change?
Yes, I do. I really do. I think it is changing. I think people are willing to open their minds to change their perspective about the stigma. I don't begrudge, I mean, of course, like there is some healthy fear when someone considers changing their consciousness. It's interesting that the stigma, I was talking to my son about this the other day, in society, people don't seem to have any problem with changing your consciousness by ingesting alcohol.
I was just going to say the same
When you ingest
thing.
alcohol, you get a buzz and your consciousness is changed, but no fear there. Smoking weed, people are like, yeah, some people are a little hesitant. I don't know if I want to smoke weed, or they smoked weed and it made them feel weird or paranoid or anxious. So like, I don't really want to do that again.
Right.
So they have that association. But a lot of people are like, yeah, smoking weed, whatever, it's no big deal. Why would they be like, oh, if you take mushrooms, even microdose, you're gonna be, lose your mind. So it's not change your mind, you're gonna lose your mind. I think people think they're gonna go crazy when they take a psychedelic, which is really unfortunate. There's a long history of people thinking that, you're gonna run out in the street naked and get hit by a car, or jump off a roof, or go swimming and drown or something like that, not paying attention to reality. But that's certainly not with microdosing. But JD, the research on microdosing is very inconclusive. I know there's tons of people that swear by it, just like you said. Your friends have said, why haven't you tried this? Da-da-da. People swear by it, whether it's LSD microdosing or psilocybin microdosing. But they've looked at it in studies, clinical trials, and they haven't found any real solid evidence that microdosing actually does make a difference. I think with one study with LSD, they showed that while people were microdosing during the month of LSD microdosing, they did show improvements on several measures of mood and cognitive functioning, attention, that kind of thing. But after they stopped microdosing, the positive effects went away. So when we talk about microdosing, I think it's safe, and if it's effective for some people, great. But also one of the things about microdosing, which is interesting, are we just trying to replicate the SSRI model of taking a medication every day? There's different microdosing protocols where people say, well, take the microdose 5 days in a row and take 2 days off, or take it 4 days in a row and take 3 days off, or take it every other day. But then you're on this repeated dosing schedule, and then how is that different? We're going to throw shade on someone who takes Prozac every day. I mean, for 30% of people, the traditional SSRIs work fine. They work well.
Right.
So are we just trying to replicate another pharmaceutical model by taking psilocybin every day in a microdose format? I mean, it's natural. Get it? It's like taking vitamin D or something every day. So
there's comments about big pharma here.
Okay.
And safe to say that many of us, most of us, are not big fans of big pharma.
I believe that the pharmaceutical industry has both produced some very solid medicines to really help people in a lot of different ways with mental health and physical health conditions, and also it's a fucking racket. There's so much to it they're so full of conflicts of interests, from research to institutions to paying paid consultants and falsifying research data and all kinds of stuff. That's really because it's $1 billion industry. It's a capitalistic market. But some medicines help some people, so
sure.
I don't think it should be completely thrown out. But it's got some serious problems. And honestly, I think pharmaceutical industry is behind blocking some of these decriminalization measures because they're in clinical trials to develop these medicines as pharmaceutical drugs to be given in clinical settings. And the more people that are getting access to it in a legal way or a decriminalized way, the less likely they're going to have customers for their pharmaceutical products.
Sure.
So there's actually proof out there that pharmaceutical companies have lobbied state governments to not decriminalize psychedelics because of their protection around their product.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're a psychologist?
Yep.
A psychiatrist?
Not a psychiatrist.
All right, you're a psychologist.
Yeah, clinical psychologist doctorate. Yep.
But you can prescribe.
If I lived in Colorado or Utah, New Mexico, Louisiana, Illinois, Iowa, or Idaho, I could prescribe. But I'm in a state where licensed psychologists who have a master's degree in psychopharmacology and a lot of training in psychiatric medications and all medications, frankly, I'm in a state that doesn't recognize that discipline as being a prescriber. So I'm not planning on moving out of Vermont, but I am working on legislation to allow specially trained psychologists to prescribe psychiatric medications, or more importantly, to de-prescribe psychiatric medications.
Interesting. What do you say to a patient, a client who says, I'm microdosing now and it's working for me, or I haven't done this yet, but would you suggest that I maybe try microdosing? What would you say? I wouldn't
recommend somebody try microdosing as a formal recommendation because it would be recommending somebody commit an act that's illegal, and that's unethical. So I can't do that just as part of my profession. I can't say I recommend you go do an illegal drug.
Right.
I can't say that. I mean, with cannabis, for example, there was a list of conditions when it was just a medical cannabis model that in order to get a cannabis card, a medical marijuana card, and be able to get cannabis at a dispensary, if you had post-traumatic stress disorder, for example, you had to go to a licensed mental health provider and have them sign a form that says they've done an assessment on you and they diagnose you with PTSD. And with that form filled out and signed, you can get a cannabis card to get your medical marijuana. So that was an exception where we could say, yes, this person has a mental health condition, and that authorizes them to use a federally illegal substance, even though it was medically approved here in Vermont. Could we do something like that with psilocybin? I'm sure we could, but
what about ketamine?
Ketamine's fully legal. I do ketamine-assisted psychotherapy in my office. There are ketamine clinics here in Montpelier, up in Colchester. I do it in Stowe. There's some resources, I believe, in southern Vermont. Ketamine has been FDA approved for the treatment of major depressive disorder, acute suicidality, treatment-resistant depression,
PTSD.
It's being used for all kinds of things, off-label for anxiety, for PTSD. And it for some people, it's an effective experience.
You know, part of the concern here is, from what I've heard, is, you know, at what point do we tap the brakes with regard to age? So if we're in a position where we're able to go forward with prescribing as a doctor,
prescribing psychedelics?
Yes. Do we stop at age 17, age 18, 21, 10?
That's a great question. I think that I believe that there would be rules written if they were approved by the Food and Drug Administration for medical use in medical settings. They would have some limits on what age groups, dosage, all those kinds of things. So it's hard to speculate on that. I believe it would be for adults only, probably 21 and older, if it was in a medical model. But, I used a lot of psychedelics as a kid, and they say that's probably why I'm so screwed up. But I used a lot of psychedelics as a kid. So, from the age of 15 to the age of 20, I used a lot of LSD and psilocybin and MDMA, and among a lot of other things, a lot of cannabis, a lot of alcohol, some cocaine, all that kind of stuff at a young age.
You did?
Yeah. And so, in terms of imagining a healthcare system where adolescents are being prescribed in a safe and effective way some of these psychedelic substances, I don't really think that's super unsafe, just from personal experience, although I was using it in a very self-destructive way, so it was dangerous.
Comment here, I don't want my PC prescribing chemotherapy, and he shouldn't be prescribing psych meds either. Way too much involved that a 15-minute appointment can unpack.
That's an argument for why prescriptive authority for psychologists is a good idea. Now, primary care physicians can and do prescribe the majority of psychiatric medications in the state of Vermont and in the country. That doesn't mean that they're the best prescribers of psychiatric medications. They do have the medical training to know pharmacologically what might be safe or unsafe in terms of using a psychiatric medication. But they, as the person who wrote that knows, in a 15-minute visit, I've had patients come to me and said, I went to my physician for a consultation because I was depressed, and they asked me a couple of questions, and I left there with a prescription for lithium after 15 minutes. Lithium, diagnosed by a primary care physician as having bipolar 1 disorder, leaving with a script for lithium. I don't think that's good practice. I really don't. And in those cases, I don't think primary care physicians are well suited, not because they don't have the medical training and be able to do this safely, but they just don't have the time, and they don't have the system in which they work to be able to really sit with people and understand, is this medication appropriate? Is this really this person's diagnosis? What business does a primary care physician have diagnosing bipolar 1 disorder in a 15-minute interview? It doesn't make sense. That's an extreme example, I understand, but to your commenter's point, I think primary care physicians are what we have, and so we need them desperately to help with the mental health crisis, but we can do better.
What are you and Dr. Klein and your society, your group, saying to state legislatures right now? Are you guys proposing a bill?
Right. I can't speak for Dr. Klein. The report that came out made 2 recommendations to lawmakers. So it's going to be, the report has been submitted to several legislative committees that are going to review the report. Our recommendations were to continue the group with expanded number of members to get more input and continue to monitor data coming in from places like Oregon and Colorado, as well as to recommend to the legislators that we set up a increased education and training for the public and healthcare providers for risk reduction purposes, because people are using these substances. Those were our recommendations. So in order for us to move forward with something in Vermont, we would have to take a leap of faith and say, we really appreciate this report. You guys did your homework. You did a great job of doing the research and making these recommendations. Thank you. But we want to see something move forward here in Vermont. So a future bill, if one comes out, which I suspect there will be, that it will look at some sort of decriminalization of psilocybin model for personal grow, personal use, personal sharing, not a commercial or legal model, but a personal grow model, much like we had for a little while with cannabis, as well as having some sort of non-cumbersome oversight system that involves healthcare providers in a consultation kind of model, so that people can, if they're going to use these substances, they can go to their licensed healthcare provider and talk about their experience without fear of judgment or stigmatization.
I have literally had an indigenous gentleman say to me, the answers for everything are and always have been right in front of us, literally right under our nose. The cures for everything, cancer, the list goes on. Inflammation, I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And this man said to me, look at how all of a sudden we've got the word mushrooms are coming more common now. We're seeing what, mushroom coffee? You're smiling, mm-hmm. So you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. What do you say about that?
Well, I don't know if he was referring to mushrooms in particular. Was he?
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean, there's all kinds of nutritional benefits to not just magic mushrooms, but lion's mane and turkey tail and reishi and all kinds of different strains of mushrooms that can have lots of health benefit right under our noses. I mean, if you watch the movie Fantastic Fungi, you'll be blown away by the what's called the mycelial network. It's like the internet of the environment. You know, that the mushrooms are all communicating with each other underground and all other plants and beings, and they're producing and, you know, helping decay and grow all kinds of, you know, energies and nutrients. And, you know, for us as humans to be like, oh, right, yeah, we should be connecting with these.
Scientifically,
these
that's nothing that man can recreate.
Right.
We can try in a lab.
Yeah.
But we can't go anywhere near it.
Yeah.
Mother Nature's all powerful.
Yeah. Shout out to Mother Nature for sure.
Yeah. This is fascinating stuff. So we could see some language here in a bill within what, the next couple of months?
Yeah, I would imagine in January we start a whole new session, some new legislators up there under the Golden Dome. I believe lawmakers are very interested in this subject, and they'll be very interested in this report. But I also think that there's a lot of, like I said, Vermonters are independent, forward-thinking. We like to do things on our own. We know what we can do to help each other. We do help each other. I mean, Barry has been through so much, and the community has just rallied around each other to support one another, to revitalize this community. And that happens all over Vermont, no matter what's going on.
Yeah.
So I think we can rally around this effort and say, we can do this in a safe and effective way. I believe there will be a bill that looks at the decriminalization and the safe and maybe community use model of using psilocybin for personal reasons, for medical reasons, you know, for mental health reasons. You don't have to either have a mental health diagnosis or not have a mental health diagnosis. I think people should be able to access these tools in a safe and effective way. And I believe we have the mindset here in Vermont. We have the setting here in Vermont to be able to produce something really special, probably better than Colorado and Oregon. And that's what I hope to see.
Do you think that Vermont would like to kind of maybe sit back and see what other states are doing before we are the decisions that other states are making slowing our progress here in Vermont?
I would say yes, they are from a medical standpoint and from some of the decision makers' standpoints. There's an attitude of like, let's slow down, let's take our time, let's continue to monitor. We don't need to do anything just right now. And I understand that perspective. But I think these decision makers also have to look at the data and look at what people are actually already doing. And the more we say, let's slow down, let's wait, the more people are suffering, the more people are struggling, the more impatient people are getting, the more people are realizing that you start to lose trust in those decision makers who keep saying, slow down, slow down, slow down. The evidence is clear, whether it's medical evidence or the evidence from cultures for thousands of years. There's evidence all over the place that this is safe. There's no reason to keep these drugs illegal under the shroud of illegality and stigma and all that kind of stuff. Again, right. Provided that we think we are thoughtful and safe about how we roll something out here in Vermont, we don't need to wait. We can just be creative. We can be thoughtful. We can put the structures in place that's not super cumbersome, that's not over-regulated, that's not super expensive, especially for access. I mean, if you look at how much it costs somebody to have a psilocybin experience at a licensed facility in Oregon, because it's so highly regulated and the permits and the licensing cost so much money, all the different things that you have to put in place to be able to serve psilocybin to somebody in Oregon, we're talking $3,000 for the day. You have to pay $3,000, sometimes $3,000 just to have an experience. That's outrageous. So we can't turn to insurance companies and say, well, we think insurance should pay for it. Insurance companies aren't going to pay for it until it's FDA approved. So, is there a model where people can get access to it, having group sessions where it's only, $400 each person to sit for the day, and have a couple of facilitators, make sure it's safe and effective. There's a big difference between $500 and $3,000. $500 is out of reach for a lot of Vermonters, most Vermonters, but I believe it could be made accessible through creative funding streams, generating sort of fundraising efforts, and there's healing to happen here. I mean, it's just waiting there for us to activate something.
I can't remember her name. You introduced me to her. I subscribed to her love letters email. The lady up, was it? Is it
Rootstock Retreat? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. I mean, I can't really, publicly comment or endorse anything that people might be doing that could be outside of sort of legal structures, but there are folks who create communities and safe, controlled environments where these experiences can happen very safely. So, is it happening already in Vermont and across the country? It absolutely is, and the people that are doing this should be honored. They should be revered. They should be praised because they're doing really good work. They should not be operating in the shadows. They should not be operating under fear of any kind of legal action. It's more criminal to go after these folks than it is to, it's just tragic. So I really believe that there are examples out there. It is being done. It can be done. And we need to do something here in Vermont.
How can folks learn more about you? How can they get in touch with you? How can they learn about the Vermont Psychedelic Society?
Oh yeah, there's a website called vermontpsychedelic.org, and we've had annual conferences, and there's a limited amount of resources there, but there is a contact us link on that page, vermontpsychedelic.org. I'm the only one that monitors that. I'm very, 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 very busy all the time, so I really don't get to that email inbox very often. But I'm also, I'm active on social media. I'm on Twitter X and Blue Sky, and that's a new one.
Yeah, the Blue Sky is kicking ass.
Yeah, and LinkedIn, and Instagram and stuff. The Psychedelic Society of Vermont has an Instagram page. It's getting more and more active. I'm pretty much the one who's monitoring all that stuff, so it gets to be a lot. But I'm pretty accessible, and people have questions. I can refer them to other resources, the research that's out there, harm reduction tools, anything that they might need. I can just send them quick links and things like that. So
Glenn just asked, what do you think, 10 years before this treatment's going to be available?
Psilocybin, I would say there's been some recent delays again. MDMA and psilocybin. MDMA is also known as ecstasy. That was recently rejected by the FDA for post-traumatic stress disorder, which was tragic. That happened in August. But they're going to go back to the drawing board and do another clinical trial that's going to take 2 or 3 years. So here we are on the cusp of 2025. I believe probably realistically 2028, 3 years might be the soonest that we will see the next FDA-approved psychedelic drug, whether that's psilocybin in a pharmaceutical form or MDMA for PTSD. We have ketamine right now.
Yeah.
So those are the next two, probably 3 years, optimistically.
How can Vermonters stand behind you, support your efforts? Is there a petition? What do we write to our legislators?
Yes.
What do we
if
do?
anyone's listening to this and they believe anything I've said is reasonable, which you may not, and I totally respect that. But if you believe that, Vermont is ready for something, then please talk to your legislator. In Vermont, we can email, we can call any of our legislators so easily. It's a citizen legislature. We don't have ballot initiatives, so we can't just take a public vote and pass something like other states can. We have to talk to our legislators, and legislators are ready to hear what we have to say. They want to hear it. The more people that legislators hear from, the more likely it is they're going to take action. I've heard it takes a minimum of 10 calls, more than that.
Per person.
Per legislator.
Yeah.
Yeah. Each legislator has to hear from at least 10 people
Right.
in order to to listen. So if you're listening to this and you can go onto the vermont.gov website, legislature website, look up who your local rep is, your local senator is, especially Senate and House Judiciary, because we might be looking at a decrim model. It's time to decriminalize psilocybin. Reach out to them. Anybody that's on the health committees, the House Health Committee or the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, reach out to them. Just say, hey, I heard this program. I heard JD. He had this guy on. He was talking about psilocybin. I really think we should do something in Vermont. I think we're ready. Just go ahead and reach out to them. Do it now. Look it up right now if you're listening. Go for it.
It's great stuff, man.
That was a plug.
Yeah, no. Rick, we're watching. We're listening carefully to see what you're doing. And hopefully there's going to be some real traction here in the near future.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's amazing.
We'll keep at it.
Incredible to hear what you have to say always. Thanks so much for coming in this morning, buddy.
Thank you so much, JD.
Appreciate it. And our friend, Rusty DeWeese, going to be with me on Wednesday morning.
Good old Russ.
Day before Thanksgiving.
Woo!
Talking about his concepts of Thanksgiving and being thankful and everything. It's going to be interesting.
Mind-blowing, always.
Yes,
Talk about psychedelic. Rusty is like the how to change your mind. He'll get you going.
Oh my God. No. Thanks for coming in, buddy.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate you so much. Dr. Rick Barnett, my guest this morning on Aired Out. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
All right.